All right, so it's the time of year where so many of us sit down and we come up with these goals and dreams and plans that we set for the year. But then so often we get to the end of the year and we look back on those goals and they're nothing more than a distant memory. So in this video, I want to talk about 4 things that you need to do to take the goals that you set here at the beginning of the year and actually turn them into success by the time we get to the end of the year. Hey, what's up? It's Jeff with Property Brain, and in this video, I want to talk about 4 things that you can do to take the goals that you set here at the beginning of the year and turn them into success over the coming year. Now, first off, this video is not going to be a deep dive into goal setting. There's thousands of resources online, whether it's people like Michael Hyatt or Tom Ferry or thousands of other business coaches or entrepreneurs or mentors that talk about goal setting, and so many of them are great. There's a bunch of different variations, so I'd encourage you to go find one that you believe in or a person that you follow that you believe in that can talk about goal setting and find a course or a resource or something like that. But in this video, we're going to focus more on what you do after you set the goals to take you from where you set the goal to the actual attainment of the goal. Now, really quick before we do that, we're going to jump in and just do a really little overview. If you don't have a resource or if you haven't found one yet, many times the resources you're going to find that talk about goals are going to talk about an acronym called SMART. Now, setting SMART goals is something that I believe in. It's something that every time I set a goal, I try to set a SMART goal. And traditionally what that means is it's an acronym that stands for goals that are specific, measurable, actionable or attainable, realistic or relevant, and time bound. Now, for example, let's say we're setting a goal as something like, I want to make $500,000 this year. That goal would fit well into the SMART framework. It's specific that we've set an actual number. It's measurable that as we go through the year, we can actually see, did I or did I not hit that goal? It's actionable or attainable because I can actually go out and make money, and therefore it is actionable. Is it relevant? It is relevant. It's about a business goal. I'm setting a business goal when I'm putting an income onto a goal, and therefore it is relevant to my career. And it's time bound. I've said I want to do it in the next 12 months or this year. So that would be a SMART goal. Now, there are goals like this that you need to be setting in every area of your life. So one of the things that I think is really important also to review really fast is that when you're setting goals, and we're specifically talking today about from the perspective of your real estate career, but when you're setting goals, you can't just set business goals because you're more than just a realtor or more than just a real estate professional. You're a person that has other areas of your life, whether it's your family, your relationships, your spiritual life, your physical health, your contribution to the world. So you need to set goals in each and every one of these categories. Now, you don't want to overwhelm yourself by setting tons of goals, but typically it's recommended that you set somewhere around 1 to 3 goals per area with a total of around 10 goals. And by doing that, you're giving yourself enough goals that you're going to be challenging yourself in all areas of your life, but also not too many goals where you're going to be overwhelmed to the point that you just can't take action. All right, so now that we've done a quick overview of goal setting using SMART goals as the framework, let's talk about the 4 things that you need to do to take the goals that you set and actually make them a reality by the end of the year or by the end of whatever time frame you set with that goal. So the first thing you need to do is you need to keep them top of mind. Now, this is, in my opinion, probably the most important thing. And this is because so many times when you set a goal, when you sit down and you come up with this grand plan here in January, maybe you did it in December, you come up with this plan of this life or this vision that you have that you want to achieve something. And you get so excited and you're fired up. And then the next month happens. And as we work our way through the year, you just forget about the goal. It's something that you no longer are focused on. The number one thing you can do to take a goal that you set and make it a reality is you have to keep it top of mind. Now, there's a couple ways to do this, but generally speaking, most people that talk about goals would recommend that you write them down. And I'm a big believer in that. You can write them down physically, you can type them into your phone or computer, but it's important to make sure that you're seeing your goals every single day. Now, I personally believe in writing them down every day. And many business gurus would say that you should actually do it every morning and every night. So it should be the first thing that you see in the morning, it should be the last thing at night. While I'm not good about making sure that it's always the first thing I see and always the last thing I see, I do try to make sure that I'm seeing my goals every morning and every night. I would encourage you to do the same thing. Again, whether that's you want to write them down physically. I'm not a big fan of handwriting, but I do know that there are resources that would state that the impact on the brain when you write something physically is more than when you type it into a phone or when you type it on a computer. If you're a person that likes to write, I'd encourage you to get a journal and physically write them down. Every single morning, every single night, write down your goals so you're keeping them top of mind. If you're more like me, you're a bit more of a tech nerd, I would encourage you to put them in your phone, do it in an iPad. Sometimes I actually write them on my iPad, so I try to get a little bit of the technology and the writing combined, but I'd encourage you to pick whatever method you think will be most likely for you to follow through with and actually put it into place. Now, I think it's really important what I just said there. Pick the method that you think you will most likely follow through with. If you're like me and you don't like writing and you don't have pens sitting around and you don't have paper, if you pick that method, you're likely to not end up putting it into practice every single day. I have my phone with me all the time, or I have my computer with me. So choosing the method of using technology makes it more realistic that I actually achieve my goal of writing them down every morning and every night, versus if I said I was going to do it physically with paper. Some other things you can do to keep them top of mind is you could print them out and put them on your desk. You could create a background for your computer or for your phone so you're seeing them all the time. You could write them on your mirror in dry erase marker. The goal is just to keep them top of mind so you're seeing them repeatedly every single day. Tip number 2 would be to turn your goals into habits. Now, I said the first one was the most important, and I do believe that. But ultimately, this one is the one that is probably going to have the most impact on what you achieve. If you forget about the first one, you might not achieve anything. If you do a really good job with this one, you're going to achieve a lot more. And the reason for that is because there's a saying that our thoughts become our actions become our habits, and our habits become our outcomes. And so if you can take a goal and break it down and turn it into actionable habits that you can create every single day, you're far more likely to receive an outcome that you desire than if you just focus on the goal itself. Did you know that if you make 1% improvement every single day, it can have a profound effect over the course of a year? Mathematically, if you look at the number 1 raised to the 365th power, which means it's compounding 1, and then the next day it's the 1, you get to the end of the year, it's 365. You've made no progress. You haven't lost any ground, but you have made no progress. But if you look at 1.01, which would be a 1% improvement raised to the 365th power, you actually get a result of 37.8, which means that just by making 1% improvement every single day, you actually end up with a result 37.8 times greater than if you hadn't made that 1% progress every day. So this is where, when you're breaking down your goals into habits, it's important to realize that you don't need to make massive momentum every single day, but by breaking it down into a habit that you can do repeatedly, you're going to get a much greater result at the end of the year due to the compounding results of all of those actions that you've taken over the last year. One of my mentors, Ed Mylett, has a really great book out. It's called The Power of One More. If you haven't read it, I'd really encourage you to go to Amazon and pick it up, listen to it on Audible or something like that. But it's one of the best books I've read in the last couple of years. And the reason I say it is because of this overwhelming theme of the book is this idea of improvement, of doing one more. Okay, and so when you take these goals and create habits out of them, I would encourage you to apply that theme to your goals, to sit there and say, how can I improve? Now, the idea is to create a habit, and then the principle that Ed teaches in his book would take it to a whole new level by saying, let's create a habit, but then let's push ourselves to do one more. An example of this would be, if you're gonna make 5 prospecting calls, make one more. If you're going to go on 3 listing appointments, try to go on one more. If you're going to generate leads, try to generate one more lead. And if you're constantly pushing yourself, one, you've created the habit of making the phone calls or going on the listing appointments or generating the leads, but now we're supercharging it by actually saying, let me take that habit and let me go a little bit more. Let me get that extra 1%, let's say, so at the end of the year, you're gonna realize that compounding result. All right, now that we've talked about that you need to take them and turn them into habits, how do you do so? The most important thing that you can do would be to work backwards. You need to break the goal down and work backwards from the end to get to the habits that you can do today. Alex Hormozi actually talked about this recently in a video that I thought was really great. On his Instagram, he posted a video where he talked about how creating goals is not a good way to go about it, but actually creating habits is extremely important. His reason for this was because he says that the only things that you can actually control are the actions and activities that you partake in. And I think that's so true. If you sit there and say, I have a goal to make $500,000 a year, but you don't actually come up with any activities or actions that you can take today, the reality is whether or not you achieve that goal has more to do with luck than with planning. That's not a good way to set and achieve a goal. So let's look at an example of how to work backwards and break a goal down into actionable habits. So let's say you have a goal to sell 100 homes this year. Then you need to take a step back and say, okay, what do I need to do to sell 100 homes? And for every agent, that's a little bit different. Maybe for you, you're gonna say, I mainly do buyer leads. So I need to have 100 buyer leads that I actually close on this year. Or maybe you focus almost solely on sellers and you say, I need to have 100 sellers. And in that scenario, you may know that to get 100 sellers, you're gonna need to go on 300 listing appointments. What you need to do is you need to figure out and say, what is this step below the goal? So sell 100 homes. What do I need to do to sell 100 homes? I need to get X amount of sellers and X amount of buyers. Okay, what do I need to do to get that amount of sellers and buyers? I need to call on this many leads. So I need to make 500 phone calls throughout the year, which means I need to make 40 something per month. And then, okay, to make 40 some phone calls per month, how many leads do I need to generate per month? 50 leads per month, whatever it is, you need to take that end goal and work backwards to be able to sit there and say, here is my new habit. My new habit is I'm gonna make 5 phone calls per day. My new habit is I'm gonna prospect for 30 minutes per day. I'm gonna prospect for an hour a day. I'm gonna reach out to this many people in my network per day. And if you can come up with a goal that once you've broken it back down from the 50,000 foot level to the 5 foot level, you're going to actually have a plan of action that you can take each and every day or each and every week to be able to achieve the goal at the end of the year. You're making those 1% things. It's the idea of the death by 1,000 cuts. If you sit there and just say, I'm here and I want to get to here, I'm at no sales and I want to get to 100 sales, it's really hard to bridge that gap. But if you sit there and say, I'm at 0 sales and I want to get to 100 sales, and today that means I have to make 5 phone calls and go on 1 listing appointment and do these other 3 things, it becomes a lot easier to actually see a path forward to get to your goal. If you were going to go on a trip, you would map out where you need to go. If you just got in the car and started driving, the reality is you may end up there or you may not. You could end up somewhere completely different. But if you sat down and had a map and a plan to get somewhere, you're far more likely to achieve your goal of getting there than if you just sit down and hope for the best. All right, so once you've broken it down and you've come up with some actions, you may have a bunch of different actions to take, and sometimes they may even conflict with each other. So the important thing is to sit there and say, which one of these is the most important to take action on today, right now, this week, and actually focus on that one first. It's also important to realize that as you move through the process of your goal, you may find additional things that you need to do, or you may realize that things that you thought you needed to do at the beginning are not actually getting you to the results that you want, and you may have to reevaluate the goal and come up with new habits. But at the start, you need to focus on which one has the most impact. There's a great book that many of you probably know. It's called The One Thing by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan, and in that book they talk about saying, what is the one thing that I can do today that will make everything else easier or obsolete? And if you apply that to a goal, let's say it's the goal of selling 100 homes, and you sit there and say, what is the one thing I could do today that would make everything else easier or obsolete? So I need to generate 50 leads today. Then everything else becomes easier. I can call on the leads if I have the leads. I can go on the listing appointments if I've called on the leads because I have the leads. Getting the leads was the first step, and therefore it made everything else easier or obsolete. Those are the things you need to focus on. When you're creating habits, you need to focus on what is the most impactful thing you can do today, and then reevaluate it, at least on a weekly basis, and say, is the habit that I've created something that still supports my goal? And is it still the most important thing that I can do today to make sure I achieve that goal in the future? So now that we've talked about the first two tips of keeping it top of mind and breaking your goals down into habits, the third tip is to focus on the why behind the goal. Now, this is one of the ones that I think most people forget to ever do in the first place, and it's one of the most powerful things when it comes to a goal. The reason is because if you don't have a great why, at some point when things get tough, or you're tired, or you just don't want to do it anymore, or you're doubting yourself, you're going to throw in the towel. So if you have a goal to sell 100 homes per year, and it's just because you picked 100 randomly, when things get tough or you want a vacation, you're going to compromise that goal, or you're not going to be willing to work as hard towards that goal. It's really important to have a why behind the goal, something that matters to you. And it doesn't matter what it is. Maybe you want to sell 100 homes because somebody you work with sold 100 homes last year and you were jealous that they hit that number before you. It could be as simple as that. It could be something that just 100 homes allows you to be within a certain segment of the real estate population. Whatever the reason is for you, you need to have a reason. Most times it's really hard if the reason is money. Like for instance, let's say you say, I want to make $1 million, and the reason is just, I want to make $1 million. Well, as you get towards that goal, most times you're going to realize that it's not that meaningful, no matter what it is. And no matter where you're at, there's always somebody below you who's going to look up and say, man, I wish I was where you were at. You may look up to someone else and say, I wish I made $1 million. I wish I made $500,000 or whatever. And somebody else is looking up and saying that same thing to you. And you may be looking back saying, yeah, but it's not that great here. Like, I now want to be here. There's always a moving target when it comes to finances. So I would encourage you, don't just set your goals on money for money's sake or transactions for transaction's sake, but instead have a reason for it. What does it allow you to do? Does that allow your spouse to stay home and be a stay-at-home parent with your kids? Does that allow you to fund college savings? Does it allow you to take more trips? What does it allow you to do? If it's something that's really meaningful to you in those times where you don't want to make the one more call, or you don't want to go on the one more listing appointment, or you just want to take the week off and you want to say, I don't feel like working. I don't feel like going to the gym, or I don't feel like whatever the goal is in relation to. I don't feel like doing it. If you have a good why, it's going to allow you to push through those moments and really still stay on track when most people would throw in the towel. Now, once you have your why, it's really important to write it down. I don't believe that you need to write it down every day like the same way you write down your goals, but I do think you need to at least write it at first, and you should really review it at least maybe once a week or once a month to make sure that not only is the goal staying top of mind, but that why is staying top of mind as well. Like I said, it's in the moments where you're struggling or where you feel like you want to give up, or you just want to say, maybe I didn't need that goal or whatever. The why will power you through and let you do that one extra thing that day, or make that phone call, or whatever it is. So I would encourage you to write it down and make sure that you're keeping the why top of mind in addition to keeping the goal top of mind. It's also important that when you're considering your why, that you figure out whether or not the goal is something that is going to interfere with other goals. Many times, for instance, somebody might say, I want to make $1 million because I want to give my family the best life possible. But then when you sit down and you break down the goals and you work through what it takes to make $1 million, and you realize that you're going to have to do things that take away from your family, if the true why behind the reason of $1 million is to support your family or be there for your family or give them the life of their dreams, the habits that it's going to take to get there might show that you are going to actually not achieve the true goal, the true why behind the goal. And therefore you may want to actually revisit that and say, is there a better goal? So it's important to have the why, but it's also important to realize whether or not the why supports the original goal and the goals in other areas of your life. The last tip when it comes to the 4 things that you can do to make sure you take your goals from goals and dreams to actually having success on them is to track your progress. I can't stress this one enough. This one is something almost nobody does. If you already do it, congratulations. I'm really happy you do, and I would encourage you to keep it up. But for most people, this is something that they forget about. They set a goal, even if they break it down into habits or they have a why behind it, most people never end up really tracking it until maybe the end of the year. Or maybe you set a 6-month goal and said, I want to sell 50 homes in the first 6 months, or I want to sell 10 homes this month, or whatever. But they don't track it actively, okay? And so I'm a huge believer in the phrase, what gets measured gets managed. If you are constantly tracking your goals, you have a much easier time realizing whether or not you're on track, whether you're gonna fall short, or maybe you're gonna surpass the goal. And it also allows you to figure out, do you need to revisit that goal and adjust it based upon what has happened? For example, again, let's look at the goal to sell 100 homes per year. If you want to sell 100 homes per year, you need around 8 sales per month, a little bit over 8 sales per month. So I'm going to look and see, in January, did I sell 8 homes? In February, have I sold 16 total homes? Now, there's aspects of it, especially when it comes to something like home sales, that might be a little bit more seasonal. For instance, you may say, Jeff, I sell a lot of homes in May, June, July, or I sell a lot of them in the fall, or something like that. Everyone's business is different. It's dependent upon what you know to be true in your business. But ultimately, you need to sit down and say, what is my goal and how can I track it? If my goal is to sell a certain number of homes, I need to be monitoring constantly. Am I on track? Am I ahead of pace? Am I behind pace? And how do I need to revisit this goal and revisit my habits to make sure that I achieve my goal by the end of the year, or by the end of whatever time frame the goal is? If it's amount of dollars, it's easy to track. If it's transactions, it's easy to track. If it's you want to help 30 families, or you want to connect with 500 people, generally I find when you set goals that have some form of numeric component, again, we talked about making goals that are smart, and the first thing is specific. So most times a goal that has a number involved in it makes it a lot more specific, and it makes it very easy to track. Okay, so there's a lot of different ways you can do this. You could track it in a spreadsheet. You could literally write it down every single day when you're writing down your goals, and your goal is sell 100 homes. You could write next to it 6. I'm at 6 homes today. And then, next week you have 7 homes, and 3 weeks from now you have 10 homes. Whatever it is, I would encourage you to track it in some form or another. Just like your goals that you have on top of mind, by keeping them written down, by keeping them visible, I'd encourage you to make whatever method you use to track it visible as well. It doesn't necessarily need to be reviewed every single day. Ultimately, writing the goals down every day, keeping those top of mind is super important. But most times you're not going to need to track something every single day, especially when it comes to something like homes sold per year. You don't necessarily have changes every single day. So you might need to track that goal maybe once a week, or maybe it's once a month. Other goals you might need to track every day. If it's a health goal or a personal goal, something like that, you might need to track every day. Did I do a workout today? Did I spend time with my children today? Did I do X today? In that case, you might want to track those every single day. I'd encourage you to look at your tracking metrics at least once a week, just so you can stay top of mind. It's like the idea of, if you don't look at your bank account for weeks and then you open it up and you're like, oh my gosh, what happened here? That is something that you wouldn't be as surprised if you logged in every day or every couple days. But if you log into your bank account 3 weeks down the road, you might be surprised where you're at. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, but you're most likely going to be surprised because you just didn't keep it top of mind. So we've reached the end of this video where we've talked about the 4 things that you need to do to make sure you take your goals from goals to achieved success at the end of the year. And those 4 things, as a recap, were that you need to keep your goals top of mind. You need to turn them into habits. You need to make sure that you have a powerful why behind the goal. And last, that you need to make sure you're tracking the goal to know whether you are on track or not. I hope that you can take these 4 things and implement them here at the beginning of the year as you've done goals. If you haven't done your goals yet, I'd encourage you to sit down, come up with your goals. If you don't have a framework, go ahead and follow the SMART framework that we discussed quickly at the beginning of the video, and set some goals, and then take these 4 steps and find a way to implement these into your goal setting. If you've already set your goals and you've got them written down and all that, I'd encourage you to just take some of these and figure out how you can implement these as well, so that hopefully by the end of the year, we're all looking back and saying, 2023 was an amazing year, and we were able to take the goals and dreams and all that we had and turn them into reality. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that you found some of this information helpful. If you did, I'd love it if you'd hit the like button, and while you're at it, go ahead and follow us on some of your favorite social media channels to make sure that you can connect with us, where we can answer questions and just get to know you a little bit. Thanks again for watching the video, and we'll see you in the next one.